Okay, good evening. Hope you're all doing well. Today we are learning Maseches Avodah Zara, Daf Lamed Gimel, and we're starting at the two dots, 5 lines from the bottom of Lamed Beis and Lamed Beis. Let us jump right in. We had said that if there are Ovdei Kochavim who are Haholchem L'Tarfis, they're walking to their base Avodah Zara. It's a pretty derogatory word, Tarfis. It's like the gross place, like the way Makam HaTorah, if we refer to it as a very negative terminology. Asurin laseis v'laseisiman. While they're on the way to the base of Avodah Zara, then you're not allowed to work with them. Why? Because let's say a good deal happens, they'll go into their base of Avodah Zara, their base at Tarfis, and they'll say hodu to their deity kitov ki le'olam chasdo, that they did something good. So that's not allowed. Amar Shmuel Oved kochavim ha'olech l'tarfos behalicha aser. Why is it that it's aser on the way in? Because the azil lumodi kame avodas kochavim. Because if something positive happens with his transaction with the Jew right outside the base of Avodah Zarah on the way in, he'll go into the base of Avodah Zarah and he'll be Modi Kame Avodas Kochavim, like, well, thank you so much for your divine assistance. But Bechazara on the way out, Mutter, because my Dahava Hava had happened after their equivalent, I don't even want to say it, after their prayer services, after their Avodah Zarah, then we're not worried that he's going to go back into the base of Avodah Zarah. It's very unique. By Jews, we talk to HaKadosh Baruch Hu like all day long. They used to say that the Brisker Rav used to say the phrase Lishuasla Kivisi Hashem under his breath, like all day long, because of the din deorais of Tefillah Mitzorech. So, but by the Ovdei Kochavim, they didn't do that seemingly, because once they left the base of Avodah Zarah, they would no longer say their thank yous. Because here the Gemara says Bechazar on their way out, then it's mutter to do business with the Ovdei Kochavim, because Ma Dehava Hava, whatever happened, they're not going back in. What about Yisrael HaHolech L'Tarfus? What if there is Nebuch, a Jew, who's going into a base Tarfus? Says the Gemara, Behalicha mutter. If the Jew is on his way into a base of Avodah Zarah, you're allowed to do business with him. Why? Dil mahadar be velo azil, because perhaps he'll do tshuva. The ever, the everlasting trust, or I should say, hope in the Yid that they'll do tshuva, even when the person is walking into a base of Avodah Zarah. Halacha l'maisa, we are allowed to do business with them because they might do tshuva. But bechazara aser, once they've done their worship in the base of Avodah Zarah, Rahman al and now the Yid has come out of the base of Avodah Zarah, then you're not allowed to work with them because kevan de avikbe, since you are connected. Rashi uses a very unique language. Rashi says avik lashon aniva. It's a language of tied. You're stuck. You're connected. So back in the Gemara, kevan de avik ba, since the Jew is now tied to that of Avodah Zarah, mahader hadar ve'azil. That Jew will, in fact, go back into the base of Avodah Zarah. Totally different profiles of the Jew who worships Avodah Zarah and the guy who worships Avodah Zarah. Says the Gemara on the top of Lamed Gimel, Amud Aleph, excuse me, Vatanya. You just wanted to say that there's a difference between a Yid in regards to whether he was going in or going out. We said going in, it's mutter because maybe he'll do tshuva. Going out, he's going to be avik bey. Vatanya, that's not true. The Brisa says Yisrael holech l'tarfos bein behalicha bein bechazara aser. No matter how you slice it, into the base of Avodah Zarah or out, it's going to be usher to do any business with that Jew while he's either heading in or out of the base of Avodah Zarah. So there's a stira between the brisa that we started with that said that behalicha it's mutter to do business with a Jew, versus over here where the brisa says it's usher to do business with a Jew. So says the Gemara, Amar Avashi Kitanya Hahi, that brisa when it says bein behalicha bein bechazara is be Yisrael mummer, devadai azil. This is not normal. In the previous brisa, the guy was a Jew. He was walking into a base of Avodah Zarah. He didn't have the din of a mumar yet. He didn't have the din of a mumar. We thought he was going to do tshuva. The other guy who is a mumar, he already went to the base of Avodah. You're not a mumar until you're a mumar. And once you're a mumar, we don't assume you're going to do tshuva at that point. Then you have a, I want to say a chazaka, but it's much harder at that point to assume that you'll do tshuva halachically. So a non-mumar who goes into the base of Avodah Zarah, we say that behalicha, we assume he might do tshuva, and then it's mutter to do business. But if the yid is a Yisrael mumar, so then we don't allow any business with them, whether they're heading into or out of the base of Avodah Zarah. Tanu Rabbanon, 4 lines down. Ove kochav maholech liyirid. If there is a non-Jew who's heading toward a yirid, Rashi, top line, yirid, shuk shel avodas kochavim. that it's a marketplace where they sell idols. They sell a whole bunch of things. So no, definitely not that. We're talking about real idols. When I was in Mexico, I was wondering if some of the shapes that they make, like these like Mayan cultures, they had these many animals. They wouldn't look like animals, but they were like, what? Yeah.
In Mexico.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if they're real. I don't know if they have a din of Avodah Zara. They're usually made to be sold. They're usually not made as a religious article, but they might be it might not be real Avodah Zara, but it might be representative. And this is separate of the halachic issue of buying things that have full faces, two eyes, two nostrils and a mouth, which is bichlal. That's on its own right. That might be usher, if it looks very real. When I was in camp, somebody took a kitchen knife and cut the noses off of everyone on that. What's that machine called? You play foosball? This guy, Mamish took a knife from the kitchen, cut the nose off of every foosball player. I showed up in the Moadon in Camp Mosheva. There were like 24 little nubs, like just on the field. He didn't clean it up. They were all there for us to see. So he was being makbid that had a din of whatever. He cut off all the noses. I don't think that applied there. I think I'm not opposing. I just don't think that's the din. By the way, the Isser is buying them. Once you've purchased it, there's owning them is a separate conversation. But they don't look human at all. They don't have a distinction in their legs. They don't look human at all. But even in Europe, whenever they would decorate shuls with animals, they would often only do profiles. In Lansut and some of the, I went on March of the Living. So a lot of the shuls there, when they had these decorations, it was only a profile. I'm talking about something different. I'm talking about a din of Avodah Zarah, not purely a din of just making shapes. Okay, anyways, Tana Rabbanan, Oved Kochav Maholech Liyarid, if he's going down to a marketplace where they sell idols, Bein Be'alicha, Bein Bechazara Motor, no problem at all. You're allowed to do work with him, no problem at all. Yisrael Aholech Liyarid Be'alicha Motor Bechazara Aser, but a Yid who's going down to that marketplace, on his way to the marketplace, it's allowed to do business with him, but on his way back, you're not. So the Gemara wants to know, Ma'ishna Yisrael de Bechazara Aser, why is it that when the Yid is returning from the Yerid, from the marketplace, that you're not allowed to do business with him? De Amre Avodas Kochavim Zavin, we assume that the reason he went down to this flea market of Pasels was to sell Avodas Kochavim. And therefore, because he sold Avodas Kochavim, Dmei Avodas Kochavim Mika Bahadeh. All the cash that he has on him is cash that was from Avodah Zarah. That's Isser Hana. You're not allowed to benefit from that. So if you sell Avodah Zarah and all the cash in your hand is from Avodah Zarah, I can't do business with you because that's an Isser Hana. I can't use your money because your money is Asr B'Hana. So if that's true by a Yid, then Oved Kochavim Nami. We should say, Name Avodas Kochavim Zavim, Dmei Avodas Kochavim Mika Bahadeh. But that's not what the Brisa said. The Brisa said it's mutter to do avodah, to do business with an Oved Kochavim who's going to a Yerid, to a marketplace, Bein B'Halicha, Bein B'Chazara. So I don't understand your svara. If the svara is that the cash on hand after the Yerid is Dmei Avodas Kochavim, then both the Jew and the Yid have Dmei Avodas Kochavim. So why are we matir working with an Oved Kochavim at that point and not a Yisrael? So says the Gemara 12 lines down, Ella Oved Kochavim Amrinan Glima Zavin Chamra Zavin. We assume, says the Gemara, that when the Oved Kochavim was down there, he was just selling a garment or he was just selling a donkey, but he wasn't selling Avodas Kochavim. Says the Gemara, if that's true, Yisrael Nami, Amor Glima Zavin Chamra Zavin. Who says he's selling a Avodah Zarah? Perhaps the Yid is also, just like the Oved Kochavim, only selling something that isn't Avodah Zarah, like a garment. He's a door-to-door clothes salesman, or he's selling animals, whichever. So says the Gemara, an assumption about the Yid. Isa de Havale, if in fact the Jew was actually selling clothes, or if he was selling an animal, he's got like a WhatsApp group to sell things on. He's got his neighborhood. That Yid is not going down to the Avodah Zarah workshop place to sell things. He's not doing anything like that. Hacha hava mizavin. He'd sell it right here. And yesh bazeh davar ma. We know our culture. The second we need, someone said to me, "How do you know this place in Mexico had kosher food?" I'm like, "Don't worry." Yeah, like 100 people told me that they went there. We have a network. Chaver de chaver, chaver isle. We know how to share these things. So if a Yid was selling regular garments, he would never go to the marketplace of a goy. He wouldn't need to. He could sell it in the community, in the shtat. So the fact that the Jew went down to the Yerid v'haraya, he must have been selling Avodah Zara. That brings us to the two dots, a quarter, a little bit more, quarter of the way down on Lamed Gimel Lamed Aleph. V'haboyin mutarin. We said that on the way back that it was mutter for the goy. Amar Reb Shimon ben Lakish lo shanu ela she'en kshurin zebazeh. We said in our Mishnah that when a goy leaves the base Avodah Zara, on his way home, we're allowed to do work with him. And our Gemara articulated earlier that the reason why that's true is because he already left the base Avodah Zara. We said he's not going to go back, whatever it is. No. However, if they that's only true if they're ein kshurin zebazeh, if they're not walking in a big group. Aval kshurin zebazeh asurin. But if they are walking with a group of people, then it's asur eimadaito lachzor, because then maybe the group will turn around. Different psychology, group psychology versus an individual. Maybe we'd be concerned that they would in fact turn around. The Gemara is now going to talk about different kinds of containers from goyim. When we talk about nodos, those are leather. And when we talk about kankanehem, those are not leather. Those are made out of earthenware. So they're made out of different materials, and that's going to be an important precursor to this Gemara. So we're at the two dots here. Let's continue. Nodos ha'ovdei kochavim that are made out of leather kankanehem. We had said that there might be an isser hana on those. Tanu Rabbanan. The rabbis have taught us in a brisa. Nodos ha'ovdei kochavim, the leather containers, if they're grudim chadashim, grudim means that they're basically not waterproofed yet. What they would do is they would take some pitch or some tar, they would heat it up, they would put it inside the leather, and then they would swirl it around in the leather to make sure all the leather was covered. And then when it dried, then it would be considered waterproof. If they're grudim chadashim, if they're new and they've never had any pitch added to them, so they're not yet waterproof, mutarin. We're not worried about those. Yeshanim, if, however, the leather is old, or if it's mizufafin, or if it does have the pitch, then asurin. And we're going to dig into all of this. Ove kochavim, rivavan ve'avdan v'nasan l'sochan yayin. Let's say that the guy was rivavan, he stirred up the pitch, ve'ivdan, and he worked the leather with the pitch and made it waterproof. And while the pitch was still warm, nasan l'sochan yayin, and he poured in some of his own yayin, really yayin nesach, he's an oved avodah zara, and it's his wine. V'Yisrael omed al gabav, and there was a yid standing over him, watching him do that. Says the Gemara, eino choshesh, which is a omer dorsheni. Why is it? And we're going to ask this question right now. If the guy poured his own wine, not just the guy, he's an akum, he's an avodas kochavim u'mazalos, his wine is for sure yayin nesach. If this guy poured in the wine, ki Yisrael omed al gabav ma'havet. Stam yenam doesn't go away just because a Jew is standing there. If a guy opens the bottle of wine and it's not mavushal, the wine is a complete iser derabanan to drink. Complete, formal iser derabanan to drink. Remember we said it's similar to the tuma of a sheretz. It's completely usher to drink and tame and mitame. So it says the Gemara, why would it help if the goy was pouring wine that there's Yisrael omed al gaba? So it says the Gemara, two answers. Answer number one, halfway down, smack middle of the page, Amar Rav Papa, Hachi Kamar. This is what's going on. Oved Kochavim was Rivavan ve'ivdan. You're right. He stirred the pitch, and ve'ivdan, he worked the leather and poured it inside the leather. But it wasn't the guy who poured in the wine. V'Yisrael nosen l'sochan yayin. V'Yisrael omed al gabav eino choshesh. Should be eino choshesh. So that's why it's mutter, because there was a misprint in the brisa. It was not the Oved Kochavim who added in the wine. It was a Yid who added in the wine. So now we have three people. We have the guy who did the pitch. We have the Yid who added the wine. And now we have a third person who's Omed al Gaba. Asks the Gemara, Umeachar to Yisrael no sein l'sochan yayin. If in fact it was a Yid who poured in the wine, Yisrael achar Omed al Gaba v'lamali. He's a Yid. He's a from Yid. I don't need another Jew. The only time we need another Yid is when you need like hashgacha. But we don't need a Yid. Like with this, we have the first Yid. The Yid is holding the wine. It's his wine. This guy next to me is a goy d'oraisa, and he's making the leather thing, and he puts in the pitch, and I pour in some wine right before it finishes cooling off. Why do I need someone who's omed al gabav? I don't need another Yid. So the Gemara says, yes, you do in this case, because dilma agav tirdei. Menasech v'labadaite. That maybe because Yid number one who's pouring the wine is distracted, and because the Yid is distracted, perhaps during that time the Goy will be Menasech on the Jew's wine, and Lavadaite he won't notice, and therefore we need two Jews. One Jew is pouring, and the second Jew is watching the wine so that the Goy is not Menasech on the wine before the Jew pours. All of that is answer number one. But here is answer number two. Rav Zvir Amar Le'olam Kidika Amris. Really, it was like we said before, that the guide was the one who actually poured the wine. Let's go back to the way the Brisa was written. The Brisa said that when there was a node, there was a leather pouch for wine. And in order to make it waterproof, there was a guy who took some pitch, he heated it up, he stirred it up, he poured it into the leather container and swished it around and poured it out. And then the guy, poured in the wine. So that's a problem. So why would that ever be okay? Says the Gemara, because Kedekamer's meikar. V'hacha, over here, the reason why we're not concerned about yayin nesach over here is because of the following. Be'edna de kashadile, when the guy poured in the wine, nase kezorek mayim latit, it was like he put in water into clay or cement. So let's say that a person was making pottery, and you have your clay and you add in a little bit of water. What happens to that water? Does the water ever come out again? No, it stays there. So when you pour in the wine, even if it's yayin nesech, if it's early enough in the process before the pitch warms, it absorbs into the pitch and it never comes out again. It gets locked in. And therefore, we are allowed to still use those nodos of an akum, even though yayin nesech was poured in there. Because the yayin nesech that was poured in earlier in the process. It absorbed into the pitch, and no different than water being absorbed into clay, so too the yayin nesech was absorbed into the pitch, and it's as if it doesn't exist anymore. Afal pi that there's an iser hana, there is no hana. It's gone.
Wouldn't it be absorbed out into whatever gets put into the pot?
Well, we're talking about a leather bag that's lined with pitch. So we assume that because it's a cold liquid, it will absorb into the pitch only and not into the leather. And it will not reabsorb back into the, right. It's locked in, just like you can't extract the water from pottery. I know I said this right. I just don't understand it. It still should be an Isser Hana. It's not. I mean, the Gemara says it's as if it's not there. It's Kizorek Mayim Latit. It's as if it's gone. We treat it as gone. Afalpi that it's mamish not gone. It's there. The flavor doesn't come out, but it's not about flavor. We're not talking about tam. We're talking about Isser Hana. Okay, the Gemara assumes that, and I'm wrong.
I mean, what Isser Hana? What advantage? Like, what's the Hana? Doesn't improve the leather. Doesn't give a tam. It doesn't. Maybe I'm saying maybe that's it.
Maybe that's it.
Otherwise, you're right. Our approach always is you don't touch it. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But that might not be how you understand it.
Right. Hana is certainly financial gain.
Right.
It's certainly drinking, or those kinds of things. Those are pashut.
If it wasn't tam, would be.
We're assuming no tam.
What is it doing for you already? It's not improving the leather. It's not. So I mean, there's no Hana to speak of. Because your question,
Rabbi Resnick said that one of the reasons that they put in the wine is because it diminishes the tar flavor. Is that hana, or is that is it lowering the pur? It's hasaras hamonea, whatever the right language is. But that was what he said. I didn't see that here. I don't, yeah. Yeah, no, it does. Rashi says it. Rashi halfway down says kizorek mayim latit she'oso yain holech leibud. It does get wasted bizefes and ubatel tamo kemayim. Ubatel tamo kemayim hanisnin betit shekalin me'elem kshemisyabei shatit harehein ki'ilu lo hayu.
So they're gone.
Af yayin ze kala bilichluchis hazefes ukshemisyabei shazefes kala me'ela b'shuveno polit. No. Yeah, but it makes, I understand that it's gone, but it functioned and in lowering it was batil tamo of the. Okay, I don't know the answer to this question. Says the Gemara 2/3 of the way down. Amar of Papi, Shma minami de Rav Zvid. It seems from the Shita of Rav Zvid that if adding the wine into the zefes, it's as though the wine is not there. That if a goy were to pour wine into a salt container, by the way, we know that that's how they stored food. They would just salt things, and they would leave them in the salt until they were ready to eat it, and the meat wouldn't spoil. So says the Gemara that if a goy pours wine, Oved Kochavim pours wine, which is yain nesach, into salt, l'chora, that shouldn't be usher either. So says the Gemara that those two things are not comparable. Pouring wine into zefes and pouring wine into salt are not the same thing. Maskif lo Rav Ashi, midami. How can you say that? Hasam ka'azel ibud. In the case of the wine that's poured into the node while the zefes is still drying or still cooling down, and the wine absorbs into the zefes, that's ka'azel ibud. Goodbye. We'll never extract it again. You'll never see it again. You couldn't, I mean, maybe in a scientific process you can extract it, but that's it. But hacha by the salt, lo ka'azel ibud, you can see it. If you have a box of salt and you pour an ounce of wine and you know exactly where the wine is, exactly. You know, like in the sugar where sometimes a drop of coffee falls in, now there's a clot of sugar. It's going to be the same thing. We see it. The Gemara ends this rhetorically and doesn't even give it another thought. And we reject that havamina, that we would say that wine that was poured into salt is similar to wine that was poured into zefes. Bar Adi Taya, this person was a merchant. Onas Hanhu Ziki me Rav Yitzchak Bar Yosef. He took these containers from Rav Yitzchak Bar Yosef. So this guy was a goy. Rama Bahu Chamra. He poured his own wine into these kelim. Ve'ahadrinhu nehale. And then he returned them. Okay, so I'm a yid. Someone's a goy. They come into my property. They take my wine jugs. They put their own wine in there, and 2 days later they return them. So we're used to thinking of libun kal, but there's no heat here. So what do you do? Right? We don't. Is there absorption? Is there what?
Can't rinse it out.
That is going to be what we discussed, but we're just not used to that. By and large, we have some applications of it in halacha, but it's not so common. Because remember, we're not koshering. There's no heat. Right. It's just yain nesech. So says the Gemara, asa sha'il bei medrasha. So Rav Yitzchak Bar Yosef, after he got his kalim back, he went to the base medrash and said, Chevra, the guy next door took my stuff. He used it for his own wine. I can smell it, but he gave it back to me. Am I allowed to use my kalim still? So Amar le Rav Yirmiyah, Kach hora Rav Ami, halacha l'maisa. Here's the din. Mimal and mayim shloshi yamim uma'aron. You fill them up with water for 3 days, and then you pour it out, and then you're good to go. However, it's not what we think. It's not 3 days of the same wine, but rather, you put water in at hour 0. You pour it out after 24 hours. You put in new water at hour 24. You dump it out after hour 48 and repeat again one more time. So you'll have 3 cycles of water sitting in the container. We know the din of kavush, of having something sit in a liquid for 24 hours is a din of kavush. So we're doing reverse kavush here. We're basically drawing out water without heat. We're drawing out wine from the container with 3 cycles of 24 hours of water soaking in the container.
Well, it's not like there's bleos, right? It's not like it's any absorbing element. We just said that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. There's obviously something. There's obviously something happening there. Yeah. So it's some type of cleansing. Otherwise, why'd you have to wait? Right? You need a waiting process.
I was going to ask, what's the havamina?
Right. Rashi says nothing. I mean, Rashi talks about me'es la'es. He just says that you have to change the water out. You have to put in new water. You can't put the same water back in. But you're right. This is not regular kavush. It just seems to function like a kavush tikadin because kavush does work this way. Says the Gemara, Savar mina hani mili didon. I thought, says the Gemara, that this is true with our flasks. But aval didhu, with their flasks, I would have said lo, and now we're going to see a big chiddush. Ki asa Ravin Amar Reb Shimon ben Lakish, echad shelanu ve'echad shelahem. It does not matter. All of them can be corrected by this 3-day rinsing process of new water every 24 hours, dump it out. I thought this would only be true by nodos. which are lined with pitch, which was a little bit, which is what Reb Daniel was saying, that, okay, these things are not, you can't even absorb anything. Aval kankanim, first of the very long lines, 4 lines from the bottom, but regular pottery that isn't lined with anything, I would have said low. Nope, that's wrong too. That we still allow this triple wash to work. And it does work in these cases, even if it's their kli. So we would never do this because it's just not our style. But let's say we found a bottle of wine of a goy and we wanted to do a little prank. So you just rinse it out. You rinse it out for 24 hours 3 times, and then you can take the bottle of wine that says, the brand of wine is called Yain Nesach Del Raisa, and you just put in your own grape juice, no problem. So that's a nice prank. It's not funny, but it's a nice prank. And then what you would do is rinse it out 3 times, and that would be totally mutter. And glass is even easier than these materials. Glass, you probably wouldn't even have to do anything. Glass, even if it was hot, you wouldn't have to do anything. But whatever the case may be, there are ways to do. So in halacha, we use rinsing generally whenever we have these kinds of minor issues.
Only time you hear that.
What?
The idea of filling with water and changing out basically is usually glass where that's done.
Why is that done? What do you mean?
Well, it's a kasher, so to speak, glass.
Oh, we're only makbid on Pesach. Oh,
No.
yeah. That's just to make it an Eino Ben Yom.
Yeah,
but that's not even with
water trick.
Yeah.
I don't really have any leather.
No leather wine pouches.
No leather wine pouches filled with tar.
With tar. Very tasty.
Trying to cut that.
Very reasonable. Tanu Rabbanon, 3 lines from the bottom. Kan kanim shalov de kochavim. These earthenware kalim of ovdei kochavim. Chadashim grudim mutarim. Even without the pitch, and or if they're new, they can be used, even if they're ovdei kochavim. Yeshanim if they're old, umezofefin, or if they have pitch, then asurin. Oved kochavim nosan l'sochan yain. What if a guy puts wine in there? Yisrael nosan l'sochan mayim. The Jew just do your triple wash and you're good to go. Oved kochavim nosan l'sochan yain. If a guy does it another time, or again just another scenario, Yisrael nosan l'sochan sir murias ve'enu choshesh. The Jew can put in sir, which is fish juice, or murias, which is fish fat, neither of which sound very appealing. Ve'enu choshesh, no problem at all. We assume that the tzir and murias cancel out anything that the wine could have ever done. Says the Gemara, Boyalahu, turning to the top of Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis, is this true lechatchila o diavad? Is what true lechatchila lechatchila o diavad? Rashi says lechatchila o diavad atzir umurias koi. Do we say, because the Svara and the Rishonim on the bottom of Lamed Gimel Lamed Aleph, when we said that the tzir and murias are able to cancel out, Rashi there says at the bottom of Lamed Gimel Lamed Aleph that the tzir and murias are sorfen es hayayin hanivla umachlenoso. Strong language. Rashi says that these things burn, and that's a language of koshering. So he says these things burn out the wine that's absorbed and destroys it. So the Gemara wants to know, is that a din lechatchila to kasher? Tashma, the Tani Rav Zvid bar Oshaya. Halokech kan kanamina ovdei kochavim chadash and nosan l'sochan yayin. Similar language, that if you take the kankanim from a goy, if it's new, and then you're allowed to put in some wine. Yeshanim, if it's old, nosan l'sochan sir murias lechatchila. This is black on white. We see that there is such an idea of tzir murias doing some type of. It's hard to call it libun, but it does seem that way from Rashi, that we have this unique language of sorfet. So we see that, yes, even tzir and murias can be a lechatchila way in order to clean out this kli. Ba'amine Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya me Rav Ami. Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya, as we've heard many times in Shas, is not Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. It's the grandson of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya. And he said from Rav Ami, another hint, because Rav Ami lived a generation and a half later, Hechziron lekivshan ha'esh v'nislabnu mahu. This is an interesting intersection, because on the one hand, no heat was used, but now we're using heat to kasher. So they should be incongruent. So says the Gemara, if we put this kli that we know has yain nesach in it, and we put it into the kiln yet again, v'nislabnu, and there's libun. So then mahu, what would the din be? Amar le, tzir sorev, or lo kol shekain. If fish brine is strong enough to burn out the blios that are inside the walls of these containers, don't you think 2,000-degree kiln will do the same job? Just an interesting side psak that Rabbi Robinson seems to hold of pretty stark is that he holds that we can't kosher warming drawers. Normally we say kibolo kach poto, that whatever, however you use it, just put it on high. So mine, the one we have is the one that has like a hechsher on it, the thing that can be used on Shabbos. And we put the way that you put it on Shabbos mode is you hold the medium button down for like 10 seconds, and then it says sab, which is obviously, and then you just leave it. So I presume it's on medium. Why can't we just run it on high? He said they're very hard to clean. When the liquids fall, you don't know how hot they are exactly when they fell. The liquids can get very hot. Is there a double gush inside the liquid? So he's uncomfortable giving heterim to kosher a warming drawer.
You use those burner things.
Mm. Like you just light it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh gosh. A warranty that if you maliciously
Let's not go there.
yeah.
Let's not go there.
You want to do it, you don't want to have an insurance fraud?
Probably very.
Yeah. Especially if you burn it up like that.
Yeah, too bad.
But my pushback was, and I asked him, I'm like, but it's kibolo kach poto. Like, just we have rules. Like, why wouldn't? He's like, I know. He's like, I'm not saying there are no shitas. I'm just saying that it's very hard to clean. And huh? Mine is very stained.
No, let's keep it going.
Shabbos and don't bother cleaning it till after Shabbos.
You think it would have been different during the week? That's very nice of you. Yeah. Okay.
You're a little bit mine.
I'm not in charge of my kitchen, so says the Gemara, Itmar Nami. We also have a statement from the Amoraim, Amar Rav Yochanan, V'Amri La Amar Rav Asi, Amar Rav Yochanan, Kankanim Shalov De Kochav Shachzer and the Kiv Shana Eish. Once these earthenware things are put back in the kiln, Kevan Shenashru Zifsan Mehan Mutarn. Once the heat of the kiln strips away the tar, the pitch from the inside, then it's mutter again. Amar Rav Ashi, lo tema ad nisrad. You don't have to say that the pitch actually falls off. Elaima rafa mirpa. Just that when the pitch gets a little bit soft, afal gav de lo nasar. You know, on those really hot days and you're walking down the street and you step on some tar with your shoe and you feel that it's soft and movable, that's what we're talking about. When it's movable, then you're already at a sign that the kiln is at a very, very high temperature. Not really to be compared to our tar, because the tar that we have on our streets gets very soft at 100 degrees or even less. Theirs did not, obviously, because otherwise it wouldn't have to go in a kiln. The Gemara offers a clever solution. Kinsa, let's take little pieces of wood, put them inside this thing, right? So we'll take wood, whatever, a whole thing of toothpicks and light it on fire all inside the vessel that absorbed the wine. Shouldn't that be enough? So this is a machlokas amar and pligi barav acha b'ravina. Chad asar b'chad shari. One said it's mutter and one said it's not mutter to burn it from the inside. V'hilchasa keman asar. We hold like the one who says that that's insufficient. My nafkamina. The nafkamina is that the kiln is so much hotter, and there's no question that any blios that are there will come out and be burned. I'm just going to use some of our halachic language. It's libun chamor versus libun kal. It's the enodoma. The temperature is so much higher. Are we allowed to use beer in the kalim of Ovdei Kochavim? Rav Nachman, Rav Yehuda Asrei, Rav Ashari. Ravina Shara Le Rav Chia Bereid, Rav Yitzchak Lemirma Be'Shechra. Ravina did allow for Rav Chia Bereid, Rav Yitzchak to put in beer, and then Azal Rama Bechamra by accident he got a heter to put in beer, and by accident he put in wine. Says the Gemara, Ve'afilu hachi, it doesn't matter. Lo chashle lemilse. This doesn't require Gzeir derabanan. We don't extend from beer to wine, which is really interesting because last night we extended from beer to wine. There was a Gzeir derabanan. So that requires Rishonim to figure out why we would say over here we're not concerned about the mistakes from one alcoholic beverage to another. And I'll just add into the mix now, beer and wine are not the same. What about tequila? What about whiskey? What about bourbon? What about all those drinks? Are those the same? We don't usually take shot glasses and put wine in it. That's not normal. But what about a regular cup? I've seen people here drink full cups of tequila. So how do we view those things? That's not mentioned in the Gemara, but if you have
You probably can't stand afterwards.
depends who you are. I would not have a liver afterwards. But these things are all shilas that come up. Let's say that a person inadvertently had a drink in their house that didn't have a hechsher, and they were using a special cup that wasn't glass, and they poured it. That's this case. That's this case over here. Is that now you've used it? He says, okay, it's okay. Rinse it out. Do your thing. Amar, the reason why he wasn't concerned about this mistake of having poured wine instead of beer was that it's akroi be'almahu. It just happens every once in a while. It's really not such a big deal. Rabbi Yitzchak bar Bizna havale hanhu mani de pekusna. This is gross. They used to make utensils out of animal manure, and they would shape it, and then they would harden, and then they would drink out of them.
Antibacterial.
Malin humaya.
Life expectancy.
Yeah, it's very short.
Yeah. 32.
Yeah. Yeah. So, anyways, they made these cups. Malin humaya, anchinhu b'shimsha, paku. So he filled it with water. This guy, it got used for yayin nesach, or for beer from a goy, whatever it was. And what he did is he took them, and instead of just doing the regular rinsing out, the triple wash like we know, he filled them up with water and anchinhu b'shimsha, and he left them in the sun, and paku, they cracked. Not such a loss, but nevertheless it was a loss for him because that was his cup. Amar le Rabbi Abba asar tinhu aloch isur olam. You made these forbidden on you forever, meaning you can't put the cup back together. Why didn't you just keep halacha like you're supposed to? Triple wash is triple wash. Stop putting it in the sun. These things are not meant to be out in the sun all day. Anymore, damar abanan memalin humaya anuche b'shimsha mi amor. What did the Chachamim say? The way that you clean this out is with a triple wash. Nobody said put it out in the sun. Stop making up your own halachos. So we have enough halachos. You don't have to add more. You don't need to be machmer. Just do what you're supposed to do. Amar of Yusna, Amar of Ami, Kli Neser, which was a very absorbent type of material, which we're going to learn about in a minute. Ein lo tara olamis, there's no way to ever be mitahir. My Kli Neser, Amar of Yosi bar Avin, Kli machfores shel tzrif. What is a Kli machfores shel tzrif? So apparently it's this type of material, as Rashi says, machfores shel tzrif, halfway down, karka shechofren misham tzrif, ubelaz alum, ubelashon Ashkenaz baisa. So it was some type of metal, but an absorbent metal, and you could never kosher it. But aluminum is not absorbent.
Alum. I was going off the word.
Yeah. Rabbi Resnick said it was aluminum sulfate, I think.
Okay, so I was half right.
Yeah. But I don't even know what that means because, I mean, look, the aluminum we have, it may just be higher level. I don't know. But whatever kind of cup that was, they could not tell they could never get the stuff out. Debay Parzak Rofila, in the home of Parzak, who was Rofila, which is second in charge. It was a hierarchical term. Onashani Kube min Pumbedisa. He took barrels from people's homes in Pumbedisa. Rama Behuchamra. He put in some of his own wine. Then he drank it. A couple days later, Adrinu Nehalahu, just like the case we had before, he returned them. Asu Shailuhu le Rabbi Huda. Amar Davar She'ein Machniso Lekimhu. These types of things are not the kinds of things that ever go into storage. All you have to do is rinse it out, no problem at all. Mishach shechan b'mayim v'hein mutarim. All you have to do is rinse, triple wash. Amar Rav Avira, hanichatz v'shchimi de armoi. These red barrels of the Armenians, kevan de lo bale tuva, because they don't absorb very much. Mishach shechan b'mayim umutarim. We're getting the principle. If you have something that is very absorbent, you're going to have in big trouble. If you have something that's not absorbent at all or very low level absorption, you just have to rinse it out 3 times and you're good to go.
In standard kashrus, right, if it's cold, none of this applies.
Yeah, but I don't think we have what they're describing. I don't think we have cups that are like super absorbent.
Yes,
I mean these things, but
yes, first of all, these things leak through like crazy. The weaker version of this.
These are not cups. These are whatever. These are garbage.
No, I'm asking.
No, yeah, because the assumption of the Gemara is that there is some absorption. That's the assumption. That's why we're doing the triple wash one.
There's no bleedings by cold items. That's in kashrus we never make a distinction between no matter how absorbent anything is when it comes to something cold, right?
By cold, no.
Right. like at all,
I don't think so.
right?
I'm not aware of a case.
Here's an entire Amud that's making a distinction between things that are cold.
Yeah,
and
but
kosher.
it's yain nesach.
Because it's or
Isra no. But to Daniel's point and what we discussed earlier, Isra hana of what? There is no absorption.
And also we brought up beer. It's not just that's
Beer, we said we're not so concerned about that. We gave a heter, but we said we're not extending to one.
right.
I mean, I think the answer must be that we're doing something unique for the world of yain nesach. It must be that way. One more line and then we'll stop. Amar Papi Hani Pasvisa. Rashi says kli cheres, another type of earthenware kli. Debay pasvisa debay michsi. Kevan delo bali tuva, they don't absorb a lot. Meshach shachan b'mayim and umutar. And tomorrow we'll start with the word kasi, their cups that they used, and we'll get into that. So we'll stop right here, about 10 lines from the bottom of Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis. Wishing you all beautiful night.